Welcome back, guys. Raccoon MMA here. It's Thursday. I got your picks for you. You know the drill at this point. Here we go. We start off, of course, with my MMA culpa. This is me telling you how accurate I have been. These last few pay-per-views have not been very good for me, honestly. I've got a 61% accuracy in 34 fights picked on this channel. 20 of them have been correct, with one no contest. But 3 of the fights that have gone not my way have been robbery decisions, so if you buy that, then I actually have a 70% accuracy. But where I really start to shine is with my method accuracy, that is the fights that I pick correctly. I'm 75% chance of, getting the method right, whether it's decision, submission, knockout, things like that. But anyways, this is just me holding myself accountable to you guys, so you know that, I'm not just yapping here, or at the very least, there's some sort of consequences to my yapping. All right, let's start out with some quick picks. We're going to start out with the undercard, Michel Pereira versus Mikhail Alexiejczuk. Good fight. I don't really like how Michel Pereira fights. I don't really like him. But just like, I don't know, as a fighter, I really don't like Capoeira. I think it's flashy and does nothing. And I don't think he's like the most professional fighter. But, he's kind of exciting. Then you've got this up-and-coming Polish prospect, Mikhail Alexiejczuk. Kind of fun. We've also got Blaydes, a Cuban Taekwondo Olympian who, in his last 3 fights, has a combined fight time of 19 seconds. All finishes on his part. He's making his UFC debut against Josh Parisian, who lost to Parker Porter. I think you know how I'm picking that fight. I think that Mikhail Alexiejczuk will beat Michel Pereira just on account of actually being a better fighter who doesn't waste energy on doing backflips in the cage, and Blaydes is obviously set up here to win, and I think he will. The guy's getting a bit older. I think the UFC is giving him an easy path to maybe doing something. Next on our undercard, we've got 2 incredible fights here. Mateusz Gamrot versus Rafael dos Anjos. Of course, a really exciting up-and-coming Polish grappler against a former lightweight champion, as well as Maycee Barber versus Caitlin Sermonera, of course, formerly Caitlin Chikagian. Both really good fights, right? Rafael dos Anjos is the all-rounder of all-rounders, former champion, really, really good fighter. Mateusz Gamrot is one of the most interesting grapplers I've ever seen. I mean, he's just so good in the scramble. I always say that he's the only guy who I could ever conceive of choking Islam Makhachev out. And then, of course, Maycee Barber, she's on a 5-fight win streak after her loss to Alexa Grasso, who's now the champion, of course, so not such a terrible loss. Really powerful striker. She's got some problems, especially with range management and things like that. And Caitlin Sermonera, former Chikagian, good in the clinch, good on the ground, kind of good everywhere. A former title challenger, really, really good fighter. How I think this is going, listen, Mateusz Gamrot has Joanna Jędrzejczyk in his corner. If you've ever seen me talking about her, I think she's basically the best to ever do it in terms of striking. And so I think, and he's been training with Dustin Poirier. I mean, he's good. This guy's really good. I'm surprised he's fighting down to RDA, but I think he's got it. Maycee Barber, I mean, the stuff that Caitlin Sermonera has been saying in the lead up to this fight, I really feel bad for her, and I kind of hope she does win, although I like both of these fighters, but I just think that, Maycee Barber is so good basically everywhere except for the clinch. And I think she's really been improving. She's on such a hot streak right now, a real title run. I think she's got the momentum. I think she's going to take it. Okay, so on to our feature prelim of the night, Curtis Blaydes versus Jailton Almeida. Good fight, right? Jailton Almeida is this rare breed of, a heavyweight grappler. And then Curtis Blaydes is, of course, he's a wrestler. He's a striker. He's kind of an all-around fighter, but he's got that wrestling base. Which I think it's an interesting challenge for Almeida. Just in terms of how, he can face somebody who's maybe more resistant to his transitions, right? Who's maybe able to get up when he gets them on the ground, right? We saw in his last fight against Derek Lewis, he was able to get Derek Lewis on the ground, but he wasn't attacking the finish, and he wasn't really able to do anything for it, right? He did basically just lay on top of Derek Lewis for 25 minutes. People hated that fight. And Blaydes' wrestling is good. I think he's going to approach this with a game plan of not trying to take Almeida down, but just make sure that Almeida doesn't take him down. Stay circling, keep at a distance, use the jab, right? Maybe go to work in the clinch. And yeah, because Almeida's not overly aggressive, I think this is his biggest problem. I think he's got a lot of skills. He's just not super aggressive, and I think you kind of need to be against someone like Blaydes, who's such a good gatekeeper for the top 5. Right, like even when he gets into a good position, I mean Almeida here, he doesn't really show too much urgency. I like both guys. I think both guys are good fighters. They're fun to watch. Good guys. But I think that I'm going to go pretty confident in a decision victory for Curtis Blaydes. Okay, we move on to our first main card fight of the night. Petr Yan versus Song Yadong. Great fight. These guys are so similar. They're both super exciting strikers, right? And I think this is like a tough call to fight. I think the odds are dead even. I don't really pay attention to gambling because I don't do it, and I don't advise people to gamble. But, it's I think a really close fight. I think people are perceiving this as a close fight. Petr Yan is in an interesting position where he's on a big losing streak. He lost to Eljo by disqualification, beat Corey Sandhagen, lost to Eljo legitimately, right? Then lost to Sean O'Malley, but probably by robbery, and then lost to Merab legitimately, right? So he's on this like weird streak where he's probably below in terms of his ranking and his position in the division where he actually is as a fighter, but he is getting up there in age. He should probably switch to the PFL, right? Whereas Song Yadong is young. I think he's 26, 27, right? He's nowhere near his physical prime yet. And he's making waves. He's beating everybody up, although he has stumbled against top-level guys before, like Corey Sandhagen, or even Chito Vera, who's fighting for the title. Song Yadong beat him, but it was such a close fight. It's one of the closest fights I've ever seen. So what does Song do better than Yan? Well, he hits harder, and I think he also has slightly better defense. But Yan is more aggressive, and he can push the pace and sort of take control of the action, right? Like, be the aggressive one more, which I think might give him a slight edge in terms of finding opportunities to land the big hits in this fight, right? Song, of course, in this case, will look to catch him in the counter, which is the harder-hitting guy maybe you want to do. But, Petr Yan is just so good everywhere that, in terms of the striking, that I don't know if he will be able to do that. Although, Song Yadong has dyed his hair blonde, so maybe this is a new era for him. I think this is largely going to be a stand-up battle. That's where both these guys are comfortable. If it does go to the ground, I think I'm going to slightly favor Song, because honestly, he's looking good there recently. I mean, I know that Petr Yan has that good offensive wrestling, but in terms of defense from Song Yadong, in terms of grappling from Song Yadong, he's looking good, right? But I think this is largely going to stay on the feet, and so while I have it close, I'm going to slightly favor Petr Yan by decision. Going to get his mojo back at 135 and see what happens. Okay, up the card. Gilbert Burns versus Jack Della Maddalena. What a stacked card UFC 299 is, by the way. That this isn't even the featured. This isn't the co-main. It's not even the featured bout. It's just the second fight. It doesn't even open the card. This is a second fight on the main card. So, yeah, Gilbert Burns versus Jack Della Maddalena. Gilbert Burns is 4th ranked. JDM is 11th ranked, but kind of on a hot streak. An exciting prospect of Australia. Burns is an absolute BMF here, right? He fights everybody. He fights everyone well. The first guy to make Khamzat Chimaev look human. But he's coming off getting dominated and pretty severely beat up by Bilal Muhammad, right? He's good. Like, he's a good striker, and he's a good grappler, too. I mean, this is his specialty, supposedly, that he's a BJJ guy. But he hardly ever uses his grappling. He certainly prefers to stay on the feet and kind of bang it out, which is not good for him against a guy like Jack Della Maddalena. Especially when Burns' biggest weakness on the feet is that he struggles to see shots coming, especially straight shots. He's very vulnerable to jabs, right? Like, he's being caught by Kamaru Usman, a wrestler, Khamzat Chimaev, a wrestler, and even Jorge, like a totally washed-up Jorge Masvidal, by these, like, straight shots right down the middle that split his guard. And JDM's boxing is so crisp, right? JDM also has, like, a slight size advantage here in terms of, height and length. So Burns is going to have to take risks coming forward, getting caught, if he wants to clinch with him or actually take him down and grapple with him. And I don't think that Burns is going to be super fast or super fluid coming back after a pretty long injury layoff. I think JDM can tag him pretty easily, and I think he can get it done in the first round. Right? Burns has a chance in any brawl, and I never want to count this guy out. Like, this will be, this is a competitive fight, but I think that Jack Della Maddalena just outstrikes him here to win by knockout. I'm pretty confident in this one. Okay, on to our featured bout. Kevin Holland versus Michael Venom Page. This is exciting. MVP finally in the UFC. Kevin Holland always game. Like, probably a stand-up battle here. Really fun. So, for those of you who don't know Michael Venom Page, if you're just a UFC fan, which is okay, he's been beating almost everybody up in Bellator. He's kind of like a Wonder Boy on crack, just in terms of like really unorthodox striking. But he's not nice like Wonder Boy. I mean, this guy once got a point deducted for pretending to take a selfie with a downed opponent. He taunts people. He caved Chris Cyborg's skull in with a knee and then rolled a Pokeball towards him. Like a real trash talker, which is kind of fun with Kevin Holland because they're just going to be yapping at each other the whole fight. But yeah, MVP is like really good in striking. In some ways. Because he's unorthodox, he sometimes gets caught by lower level opponents. But at least in terms of his statistics, and just in terms of what I've seen, like he has really good accuracies, and he's always going to hit you. And he's got pretty good defense, just because it's hard to figure out how you're going to time him to hit him. Because of his really weird unorthodox movement. He's hard to read. But I guess the question here for how well MVP is going to do is, was he doing this against top competition? Right? Is beating everybody up in Bellator equivalent to being a good fighter in the UFC, right? I tend to believe that Michael Venom Page beating everybody up at Bellator is probably pretty similar, maybe even a bit better, to if he had been beating up all the unranked guys in the UFC, and this is like his chance at a ranking. You know, Kevin Holland's 13th ranked. Just lost to Jack Della Maddalena, actually. And yeah, now this is his chance at a ranking, right? Bellator does have a pretty good roster, if we're comparing to, other, rival organizations to the UFC, like, the heavier weight classes at 1FC or the PFL, like, Bellator has a pretty good roster. But in Holland, like, we get a guy who isn't all that good defensively and is really hit or miss, right? Like, he'll prefer to take a shot to your chin and then tell you it didn't hurt him, rather than, like, avoiding the shot, right? So I think that this fight is kind of fun, because it's kind of even in the sense that I don't know who's going to win, but I think it's going to go one way or the other really drastically. Either Holland's going to beat the shit out of Michael Venom Page, or Michael Venom Page is going to show that he's that guy and put on a masterclass against Kevin Holland, right? I don't think it's going to be close no matter who wins. I just don't really know who wins, because MVP is such an unknown factor here, right? Holland is a bit bigger than MVP, which could be an advantage. Usually MVP is bigger than the guys he fights. But I just think that Holland has been taggable by so many guys that Michael Venom Page will hit him, and he does hit hard. Also, contrary to popular opinion, right, MVP does mix it up. He gets takedowns. He's got pretty good takedown accuracy. He does ground and pound. So I actually do think it does go his way for MVP by decision. Not super confident in this, but MVP by decision. Okay, on to our co-main of the evening. This is a good one, guys. Benoit Saint-Denis against Dustin Poirier. So BSD is this guy in a hot streak. He's from France. Poirier, of course, the guy who's been in the top 5 for a decade or whatever. Really, really good. Really, really good. Like, basically beat everybody. In my opinion, he is the greatest fighter to never win undisputed gold in the UFC. I mean, some of his wins over, Justin Gaethje, Eddie Alvarez, like Dan Hooker, like just all these wins that this guy's piled up forever. Oh, Conor McGregor, of course, the only guy to ever knock out Conor McGregor, the first guy, I think, and also only guy to ever finish Max Holloway, and he beat that guy twice. Like really good guy at everything. But then Benoit Saint-Denis, this guy's on a hot streak. I mean, he's just coming off of an insane head kick KO over Matt Frivola. So we'll see, right? And of course, Dustin Poirier is coming off of a loss over Justin Gaethje. The first thing I noticed here is that both these guys are southpaw, so they're going to be like, in a closed stance. And Benoit Saint-Denis does not really jab, right? And also because it's in a closed stance, Dustin Poirier switches stance a lot, but he also starts with southpaw. That, like, the body kicks that Benoit Saint-Denis likes are not really that open. And, of course, like, you usually need the body kicks to set up the head kicks, apart from extraordinary circumstances, right? So I think that like Poirier is initially like going to go into this right away with an advantage. The other thing people have been talking about these allegations that Benoit Saint-Denis has like a staph infection on his forehead, which if this is the case, he's not going to last 5 rounds just in terms of cardio. But even if he's not, I think Poirier still has an advantage here, right? Because, like, yeah, Saint-Denis hits hard, and, you know, Poirier's getting a bit older, but literally who has ever outgritted Dustin Poirier? Who's ever been tougher than Dustin Poirier in that octagon? Nobody, right? Nobody's ever done it. So, I'm just not convinced, right? Like, you know, Kamaru Usman, who normally has a pretty good chin and proves that he's got a pretty good chin in his fights afterwards, got knocked out by a head kick in Salt Lake City at Elevation. Dustin Poirier, who's got a really good chin, got knocked out by a head kick in his last fight at Elevation in Salt Lake City, right? So I'm just not convinced that head kick really proves that Poirier is washed up. And also, Benoit Saint-Denis does not kick as hard as Justin Gaethje does. I also think that even without these staph allegations, Poirier is just going to have better cardio than Benoit Saint-Denis, right? There's no a replacement for a 5-round fight. It just doesn't happen, just in terms of, you know, extraneous movements, in terms of, you know, getting nervous, in terms of just what you do when it hits round 3, round 4, round 5. You need that experience, and Poirier is a 5-round fighter, right? This is a guy who, he's not even a 5-round fighter, though. He's a guy who fights as hard as he can 4 or 5 rounds. So, I actually do think that Dustin Poirier will, like, maybe Benoit Saint-Denis will win the first round just off of, like, aggressiveness and hitting hard and things like that. And then they're going to go back to the corners, and Dustin Poirier is going to adjust his hair and put his hands on his knees, and then he's going to come out and pull his shorts up and just put in an absolute masterclass and prove he's still that guy against Benoit Saint-Denis. I like both these guys a lot. I mean, Poirier, I might be biased here, but he's basically, like, in terms of all the vets, my favorite fighter. This guy's been one of my favorites for as long as I've been watching this sport. So I really don't want to see him go out sad. So maybe I am biased here. But I do have Dustin Poirier pretty confident in decision or late finish, unless he is done and Saint-Denis can just come out there and chin him early and finish him. But listen, guys, I think I've realized that I'm the Kwisatz Haderach of MMA. I think I've drunk the blood of a drowned worm, because I see the vision here, right? Dustin Poirier beats Benoit Saint-Denis. In the interim, Islam Makhachev beats the winner of Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway. Probably Max Holloway. Also, Leon Edwards beats Bilal Muhammad, or maybe he doesn't. Whoever wins that fight. But Leon probably does. Shavkat Rakhmonov fights the winner of Jack Della Maddalena versus Gilbert Burns, and Colby Covington fights Ian Gary. So, now the fight to make is Islam Makhachev versus Leon Edwards, and Dustin Poirier versus the winner of Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan versus the interim belt. And Dustin Poirier wins that fight. Then, Islam Makhachev, who is now built for 170, has a bad weight cut before fighting Dustin Poirier, and Dustin Poirier TKOs him in the 3rd round. That is to say, I see the vision, guys. This is the first step. Dustin Poirier will become the undisputed lightweight champion of the world before he retires. Okay, so moving on to our main event. Sugar Sean O'Malley versus Chito Vera. Look, as time goes on, I get more confident in my pick in this one. Obviously this fight has happened before. Chito Vera got the TKO win. You know, he was hitting Sean in the leg. He hit the perennial nerve. Sean got foot drop, couldn't really fight. Chito is able to knock him down and finish him on the ground. O'Malley insists that Chito got lucky hitting his nerve, that 9 times out of 10 he wins that fight, that it's not a real loss, that he's actually 15-0 or whatever. Chito Vera, of course, is like, no, like, I kicked you and it damaged your leg, I won. Either way, there's this kind of discourse around this fight that, like, Chito is an undeserved contender here, that, like, guys like Merab Dvalishvili or Corey Sandhagen deserve the shot, but that Chito just gets it because Sean is scared to fight the top guys, and he's like a big star or whatever. But I don't know. I don't really care about this, right? Like, we deal with the fights that we have on this channel. And I actually think that this is a one-sided fight. Because Sean O'Malley has never in his entire career been past 15 minutes. And he's only been to 15 minutes 3 times. And the last time he went to 15 minutes, it was against Petr Yan. And he lost that fight. Like, I don't care what the judges said, he lost that fight. Right? And this is especially notable when he has a style that is so reliant on cardio and movement. Right? Chito only fights... Whereas, like, Chito only fights 5-rounders, and he ramps up as the fight goes on. You know, like, his pressure increases, and his, you know, activity increases. So I think that, like, yeah, Sean will probably win the first round. But when he's doing that, Chito is going to be investing heavily in body kicks and leg kicks to attack Sean's movement. Whereas his chin, which of course Chito has never been knocked down or knocked out, is going to absorb the damage that Sean is going to put on him. I think you can expect Sean to win the first round, maybe even the second. But he's going to slow down as his cardio starts to fail, as his legs start to get damaged, and he's going to start getting clipped. And this is just assuming that his peroneal nerve doesn't get hit again, right? Because Chito hits so hard that it's really going to take a toll on Sean, especially, you know, his attacks to the body. I think Chito can even mix in takedowns the longer the fight goes on and really screw with Sean's striking defense. I think the longer the fight goes on, the more Chito takes over. So it's either going to be a come-from-behind decision, i.e. 3-4-5, or more likely, in my opinion, Chito by a late finish to win the fight. But yeah, so these are my picks. I'm actually like 100% confident in this. Chito is going to beat the hell out of Sean, and then we're going to get the funniest fight ever, which is Chito Vera versus Merab Dvalishvili. Although I actually give Chito a better chance in that fight than I give Sean. And yeah, those are my picks. So if you enjoyed, please do subscribe. Let me know what you think. If you disagree, if you agree. I think this is the one. I'm going to get 100% of these picks correct. And we will see. I hope you guys enjoy the fights. Have a good weekend. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks, guys.